What's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be covering Chapter 4, the general formula for capital. The nice thing about Chapter 4 is that it's a lot easier to read than the past 3 chapters. It's much shorter as well. And Chapter 4 is sort of when we start to see Marx's ideas really formulate into a critique of capitalism, rather in the first 3 chapters, where a lot of what he's doing is trying to sort of lay the theoretical groundwork, which is in many cases very dense and very sophisticated and tough to get through. And so Chapter 4 is sort of a breath of fresh air after the first 3 chapters. This was something that Marx himself even pointed out. And so it's important to note that he's saying right off the bat here that circulation is the starting point, the main condition that allows for the full development of the capitalist system in general. Along with this analysis, he says that money is the ultimate product of capitalism. Money is the first sort of ingredient to the capitalist system that historically makes its way onto the scene. And as we saw in the last chapter, money emerges through the process of circulation. So again, the process of circulation being one of the fundamental conditions under which capitalism emerges. He says that historically capitalism begins in the 16th century, and it begins with individuals who have acquired a lot of wealth, such as monetary wealth or merchants' capital or usurers' capital that is derived from interest. The individuals that have acquired wealth in these ways are in a position to spread their wealth by, first and foremost, confronting landed property and acquiring landed property. And so the important thing to note here is that it's with the hoarding of wealth and it's with the advancement of a wealthy class that capitalism starts to take shape. So money, again, plays a very crucial role in the development of capitalism. And it's money in the very specific sense in what we've been talking about previously. In this chapter, he makes 2 very important distinctions between money. One is money as money. CMC presupposes that an individual producer that specializes in the production of one type of commodity brings their commodity to the market in exchange for money so that they can use money to purchase and consume the other commodities that they need in order to satisfy their needs. Now, this is money operating as money, but in this chapter, he wants to show how money operates as capital. This is a very important distinction because when money operates as capital, it's no longer being used to consume things that will be used to satisfy individual needs. Instead, as we'll see, it's used in order to consume greater amounts of money. And so in this chapter, he sort of flips the equation that he presented in the previous chapter, CMC, into a new form, the form that he calls the general formula of capital. And this is MCM. The difference here obviously being that instead of individuals producing commodities for money to bring money into the market to purchase other commodities, we have individuals that start off with a certain amount of money, purchase commodities, and then sell those commodities for money again. Now, he points out that in this process, you have CMC, which starts off with one type of qualitative value, let's say corn, which turns into money, which then is turned back into all other types of commodities, whatever commodities are needed in order to satisfy the needs of the corn producer. And so what you have is a shift in the qualitative aspect of value. But with MCM, we now have money being traded for commodities back for money. The money that we start with and the money that we end with is the same qualitative substance. What's different is the quantity of money that we begin with versus the quantity of money that we end with in this MCM equation. Under these circumstances, Marx argues that money is not simply spent in the market, but money is advanced. That is to say that the capitalist brings money into the market and spends it on a certain amount of commodities with the expectation that they will have a greater return of money at the end of the equation. Now, it's also important to note here that the capitalist doesn't just bring money into the market to purchase commodities in order to sell those commodities for an equal amount of money. The whole point of this process is so that the capitalist will end off with a greater amount of money than what they started off with. And this is where Marx's key concept comes in, which he calls surplus value. Surplus value is the difference between the amount of money you end with and the amount of money you start with in the equation MCM. And under these circumstances, money is the driving force of the capitalist expansion. Capitalism expands because money is continually sought after in greater and greater quantities. And so on page 251, he says, more money is finally withdrawn from circulation than was thrown into it at the beginning. The cotton originally bought for 100 pounds is, for example, resold at 100 pounds plus 10 pounds, i.e. 110 pounds. The complete form of this process is therefore MCM prime, where M prime equals M plus delta M, i.e. the original sum advanced plus an increment. This increment, or excess over the original value, I call surplus value. And so it's important to note here that he's talking now about not just simply a circulation of commodities, but an expansion in the value that is created through circulation. The concept of surplus value is, in Marx's own words, his most significant contribution to the critique of political economy. Political economy sort of mystifies the process of MCM and the creation of surplus value by attributing the creation of value to the forces of the market, for example. And what Marx is doing here is, again, he's demystifying where surplus value comes from. He sort of pokes fun at the political economists towards the end of the chapter here by saying that surplus value appears to be a process of self-valorization. It appears to have an occult ability to add value to itself. He says it brings forth offspring, or at least lays golden eggs, and appears to be a sort of self-moving system that happens independently of the production process. And so the ultimate thing that he's arguing here is that with the advancement of surplus value, what we now have is money not operating simply as money to purchase commodities, but money for the sake of expanding itself through a valorization process. This is how money becomes capital. This is where we see the origins of capital start to really flourish. And he just ends by noting that even when it comes to usurer's capital, where people put money into the bank or people put money into the stock market with the expectation that they will be able to withdraw more money in the future. This is just simply a short circuit of MCM where C doesn't really have as much of a role to play. And this really speaks to the degree to which the process of valorizing value, valorizing money, is sought after not only in the mode of production or in the means of production, the production process, but also just simply through the instruments that have been created, such as the financial markets, the stock market, and that sort of thing. And so the ultimate argument here is that MCM comes to have a little bit more of a privileged position in capitalist society. This is the formula that the capitalist class follows in trying to augment and grow and expand the surplus value that they generate from production. And so this is why MCM Marx calls the general formula for capital. Anyways, folks, that pretty much wraps up this video. It was short because the chapter itself was short, but hopefully it functions as a useful stepping stone into the next video, which is on the fifth chapter, the contradictions of the general formula of capital. So take care, and I will see you in the next one.